When it comes to PC handhelds, GPD has the most storied history in this field, as they've been making PC handhelds since all the way back in 2016 with the GPD Win. Despite their history, they often go under the radar for two particular reasons. Number one, they don't flood the market with new models, and number two, they also don't flood the reviewer market with review units. It's been relatively rare for a reviewer to get a unit of a GPD device when compared to the competition, and perhaps that speaks to the confidence that GPD have in their own devices. Their latest machine, the GPD Win Mini, is one that has undergone a bit of a redesign due to the fact that the original model would get hot to the touch and potentially posed a safety concern to players. The GPD Win Mini itself is GPD returning to their roots, as they have been known for their clamshell handhelds with both built-in controls as well as a built-in keyboard. It's a design that's more reminiscent of laptops than of a handheld gaming system, and speaks to the idea that these machines are meant to be there whether you want to use them for work or for gaming. In this case, the Mini exemplifies the relatively diminutive size for a PC handheld, but especially compared to its biggest brother, the GPD Win Max 2. The Mini is in fact incredibly small and possibly the tightest packaging I've seen for a handheld with the super powerful 7840U. That leaves a few burning questions that I want to answer in this in-depth review of the GPD Win Mini. Can it actually be an effective jack of all trades? Did they fix the heat concerns, especially considering how small this thing is? Does the 7840U hold up in this small packaging? And for that matter, how's the battery life? Given all of that, let me give you my disclosure. I was sent the GPD Win Mini for free. No money has changed hands, and GPD are not seeing this video beforehand. Interestingly, I do have a soft spot for GPD, with the Win Max being my first PC handheld, but that sort of thing doesn't impact me, to be honest, and this review remains completely impartial. If you're looking to pick one of these up, you can go through the Indiegogo. There are 8 options that I'll show on screen, but basically they break up into 2 categories. There are 2 options for the 7640U, and there are 6 options for the 7840U, but I nonetheless recommend the 7840U. Unfortunately, the 7640U just doesn't seem to be a good value for the performance, especially when compared to the Steam Deck, Lenovo Legion Go, or ROG Ally. You can get the 7840U version for as low as $921 and as high as $1,199 US depending on the storage and RAM. Finally, you can also pick up some related accessories like the grips, a 4G LTE module, or the GPD G1, GPD's very own external GPU solution supported by the super fast Oculink interface. In traditional GPD fashion, these accessories really support the notion that you can make your handheld into an all-in-one machine if you really wanted to. One last note with GPD is that, like many other boutique PC manufacturers, these machines are typically shipped directly out of a single country. This could pose a problem if you have to get your device serviced and are forced to ship to China and back to you. Alright, now what do you get in the box? The box I received is white with gold foil, and it's a nice touch on a simple box. Inside you get a 65-watt USB-C charger with collapsible prongs, a USB-C to USB-A adapter, and a 5-foot USB-C cable. Naturally, you get the actual GPD Win Mini as well. GPD also sent me the grips, and those came in a different box. I expect it to be the same for other accessories like the 4G LTE module and the GPD G1. The box for the grips comes with the grips themselves, as well as a small screwdriver, the needed screws, and some small instructions. The GPD Win Mini is surprisingly light, coming in at 532 grams, which is even lighter than the Steam Deck OLED. Honestly, the fact that they were able to fit such a powerful APU in a package so small and so light is an engineering feat, which does come with some caveats that I'll tell you about later. I like the look and the feel of this machine too. It has a smooth black aluminum alloy shell with smooth black plastic on the inside and this grippy texture on the sides. Overall, for design, I really have to give kudos to GPD for such a clean and unassuming look. Some companies focus on that gamer aesthetic and other companies look to match the sleek Apple style. But with the Win Mini, I think GPD has built something that is good looking, but that you can still bring to an office or even into a server room and not have anyone even give it a second glance. The build quality seems really quite good. The hinge is something that I was particularly keen on investigating, and I can say that it feels really solid. I've done a bunch of opening and closing so far, but it's nothing like putting in years of use, which I obviously can't do for this review, but turn on notifications for the 5-year review coming in 2029. One thing I can say is that the hinge on my 2020 GPD Win Max still feels great, and I used that daily for over a year. Alright, for the ports, there's nothing on the left and the right on the device. The front has one of those notches that allow you to lock your machine. Most of the meat and potatoes is essentially on the back of the Win Mini. Going from left to right, you have an Oculink port above the microSD card slot, then a 3.5mm jack, a toggle for mouse mode, and finally a USB 3.2 Type-C port and a USB 4 port. If you open this baby up, you'll see the power button in the top middle of the keyboard, and there's also a microphone here as well as the speakers. What I can't show is that the GPD Win Mini has Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2, built-in gyro, and a 44.2 watt-hour battery. Also, here are some specs for good measure. For controls, you have Hall Effect mini joysticks. These are the size of Nintendo Switch analog sticks, and perhaps more important is that these sticks are flush to the device itself. This is obviously really key for being able to close the lid on this laptop style machine, but I do think that means that the controls suffer overall. They feel better than they look, but for me, they never got to the point where they just melted away and felt like standard sticks. The D-pad and face buttons are extremely reminiscent of the PS Vita. If you're used to that, you'll be right at home here. Personally, I've been a fan of that style for a long time. For the D-pad specifically, I really have no complaints. It feels great for both types of games that I typically test, both precision platformers and fighters. The shoulder buttons and triggers sit on the back, and you might think that that would feel awkward, but I wouldn't say that it was ever awkward for me. The triggers have a comfortable pull and it doesn't feel loose. It feels like I can genuinely control how far I want to pull the triggers. Above the keyboard, you have the select and start button as well as the menu button that brings up the Windows game bar. Then there are these programmable buttons, L4 and R4. I'll go over those in the software section. I should also point out that the GPD Win Mini has excellent gyro options that I'll also go over in the software section. Then there are the more traditional laptop inputs, you know, the keyboard and trackpad. The keyboard is a great thumb typing keyboard, but the keys are too small for any real touch typing. The keys have a very satisfying click, and I like the curvature on them. That makes it easier to tell which key you're on despite how tiny they each are, and even if you have large thumbs like I do. Mistyping was rare, and when it did happen, I never felt like it was the keyboard's fault. They advertise up to 4-finger gestures for the trackpad. I only tested normal gestures like 2-finger scrolls and 3-finger show desktop. Those all worked really well. Overall, the trackpad is good enough to never feel like it gets in the way. It's responsive and generally accessible. Altogether though, both the gamepad controls and the laptop controls feel compromised. This is sort of to be expected, but it's important to keep in mind. It's not exactly a gaming device, nor is it exactly a dedicated productivity device. The GPD Win Mini is intended to split the difference, and that sort of compromise is going to be great for some people and not so great for others. One accessory that some people may consider a must-have for the GPD Win Mini are the grips. The clamshell form factor of the Win Mini leaves it pretty flat all around. Personally, I never found the mini laptop format uncomfortable, but the grips do add an extra ergonomic layer to the entire solution. They're easy enough to screw on, and they have a decent build to them. They're made with a solid black plastic with a matte finish. Just like the device itself, the plastic here does not appear to be prone to smudges. If you hold the grips by themselves, they do feel a bit hollow, but I think that's kind of what you want here. You want them to be big enough to give the device that extra curvature, but you don't want them to add any significant weight to the already very slim profile of the Win Mini. The drawback, of course, is that even though it's not much heavier, you do lose quite a bit of portability. The Mini goes from maybe you can squeeze it into a baggy pants pocket to now you're forced to put it in a bag. Outside of that, it's an easy install with the screws that come with it, and it gives you a little extra height if you have this on a flat surface. That's going to give it extra room for the intake, which should theoretically be good for cooling. One thing I will point out, however, is that this does change the balance of the device considerably. If you're opening the screen to 90 degrees, then it's no big deal. But once you get to about 105, 110 degrees, the GPD Win Mini can no longer hold itself up the way it can without the grips. Either way, I think you already know if you would prefer playing with grips or without, but if you prefer playing with the grips, I'd say that these are well built and worth picking up. The display on the GPD Win Mini is 7 inches, 120Hz, 1080p IPS display. The hinge allows the screen to go back to 168 degrees. That's really great if you're using this device for media or of course for productivity. This is a portrait display and the color looks great, and I think that as far as that goes, it compares well to devices like the ROG Ally. But if you're looking for landscape and variable refresh rate, well, yeah, you're not going to get that here. When it comes to audio, I'd say that the speakers were better than I expected. Not quite as good as the gold standard of the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally, but nonetheless quite good. Moving on to performance, I was concerned about what the cooling situation would be for such a smaller device at higher TDPs. Well, apparently so was GPD, so they've limited the TDP to 20 watts. I've used both handheld control panel and their built-in motion assistant software to raise the TDP, and the max that I personally get is 20 watts. I know for a lot of folks 18 watts is the sweet spot for this APU and its sister, the Z1 Extreme, so I kept my testing at 18 watts. Here are some benchmarks for that TDP. At that TDP, I was getting 30 to 33 watts of total system power draw. That means that the Win Mini lasts about an hour and 20 minutes when playing demanding games. If I switched to something like Celeste, well, I could force an 8 watt TDP, which resulted in a power draw of 13 to 15 watts. In terms of battery life, that means I was getting a little more than 3 hours of battery on Celeste. Overall, the heat was noticeable, but it never warmed the actual shell of the device up. The software situation on the GPD Win Mini is a little confounding. By any modern standards, the user interface is downright unusable. But if you're used to 15-year-old software standards, the functionality is actually some of the best that I've seen. Honestly, if you don't mind something like HW Info, you'll probably be fine with this. If you prefer a nicer UI, I'll give you an alternative for that as well. But first, let me tell you about the software that comes out of the box. The first thing I want to point out is an app that'll be on your desktop called Motion Assistant. This lets you do a tremendous number of things, but the most important for me was configuring the gyro controls. The sheer number of options for configuring your gyro may be overwhelming for many, but they are also legitimately impressive. First of all, you have the option to choose what kind of gyro simulation you want to do. So you can use the gyro to simulate the mouse, which is similar to what Steam Input does, but you can also use it to simulate the Xbox analog stick or the PS4 analog stick, which is similar to what the ROG Ally does. Finally, you can use it to simulate the motion on a PS4 pad, which is great if you love Steam Input because this allows you to configure all your gyro needs inside of Steam Input. This makes it the closest thing to actually using a Steam Deck. I'm not going to go into every single thing you can configure here, but I do want to point out that this software is so robust that it even lets you configure what you want to use for your gyro input. So what I mean is, sure, you have the internal onboard gyro, but maybe for some reason you bought a USB gyroscope, or you're using the Dolphin emulator with the DSU client, and I didn't even know you could do this, but maybe you want to use your X-Real Air glasses and aim with your head. Look, I'm not going to sit here and act like it's easy to configure all of this, but the fact that it exists is kind of incredible. In this app, you can also control TDP and tune the GPU and fan settings. You can even save profiles that you can load, for example, whenever you're launching a particular game. There's another app in here called Win Controls that lets you configure the L4 and R4 buttons as well as customize how mouse mode behaves. For L4 and R4, you can set up key presses or macros. This might be good for taking screenshots or bringing up the multitasking view. I don't know, I didn't really use these very much, but likewise, you can tune mouse mode so that the controls can be mapped to specific keys, but once again, I just stuck to the defaults here. The last thing I'll say about the software itself is that if you don't like this software because it looks impossible to navigate, then I would suggest downloading and installing Handheld Control Panel. I tried this as well on the GPD Win Mini and it works more like you would expect. You can control the resolution, the refresh rate, FPS limit, TDP, and more from right here, and you can do it all with the control pad. The GPD Win Mini is really a fascinating device, and I've given lots of descriptions, but more specifically, here are my likes and my dislikes. I love the overall design of this device. The fact that it's clamshell genuinely makes it so much more portable than other smaller PC handhelds. It might be a tight squeeze to fit this in my pants, but I can manage to do so if I'm wearing baggy pants, and I don't have to worry about damaging the buttons or the analog sticks if I am able to. Likewise, the build quality on everything here seems incredible. The hinge feels robust, the keys on the keyboard are smartly built and have a satisfying feel, and the controls are all durable. This doesn't feel like you have to be particularly delicate with it. In that vein, I think this device has incredible versatility. Of course, it has the keyboard, the trackpad, and controls, so it's versatile in that way, but you can also pair it with a GPU for better performance or an LTE module for extra portability. The fact that it has excellent support for gyro is also a big feather in that versatility cap, because that means you can play some shooters that you wouldn't normally be able to just with dual analog sticks. Now, before I jump into my dislikes, I'm going to mention a few things that fall into neither my like or dislike column, and that's display and audio. I'd say both are adequate, nowhere near bad, but also not anything that requires a tremendous shout out. For my dislikes, I need to start with the compromise of a device like this. Sometimes it really exemplifies the jack of all trades but master of none ethos. This is absolutely fine if you want something that can do both productivity and gaming, but I personally feel more productive on my phone than I do on this keyboard. And while I believe the controls are the best that they can do in a form factor like this, they fall short of feeling like a real control pad, which I've gotten used to in my PC handhelds. The next dislike would have to be software. I am absolutely stunned by what this software is capable of in terms of functionality, so it's halfway there, but for many people it's going to be too confusing and nearly impossible to use, so the fact that it's functional is actually moot. If they can modernize the UI and streamline the options, this could be one of the best software suites out there, but as it is, it falls into my dislikes column. The last big dislike is battery life. Again, I think they did really well with the battery life given the size of this machine, so that's something that maybe you just want to live with if you're in the market for something lighter and more portable than a Steam Deck. Still though, I've gotten quite accustomed to the battery life of the Steam Deck OLED, and as far as just my personal taste goes, I'd rather have more battery life and less performance. If you're the opposite, then this may be a good deal for you. So the GPD Win Mini is a jack of all trades that's full of trade-offs and compromises. It's not a dedicated gaming machine like the Steam Deck, and it's not a dedicated productivity machine like a laptop. It has some of the most functional software I've seen, but at the cost of usability. It's a performance powerhouse in a tight package, but I would have liked some longer battery life. With those trade-offs in mind, it's one of the best designed 7840U handhelds on the market. It has the versatility to be docked and get some extra juice from an eGPU, or take on the road with a 4G LTE module that'll keep you connected wherever you are. Personally, I had a lot of fun reviewing the GPD Win Mini. It was comfortable for me to use even without the grips, even if it felt occasionally compromised by the recessed analog sticks. The clamshell design made it so that the display could virtually always be at a comfortable viewing angle, and I had a ton of fun playing around with gyro on a device like this. With the Win Mini, GPD have shown that their storied history has led to experience in the handheld scene that leads to strong design fundamentals, and if you're someone that wants a device like this one, you're going to be really happy with what the Win Mini has to offer. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Consider leaving a like and subscribe if you want to see more. Goodbye!